S- Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this workshop today. We're going to discuss all the things that you need to know in order to submit an IRB for any community engaged research that you're going to be doing. So this workshop is hosted by the Center for Health Disparities Research Infrastructure Core, and it is being recorded. And on today's agenda, if I can get, whoops, we are going to just do some brief introductions of myself and our guest speakers, and I'll tell you a little bit about the Center for Health Disparities, or the HDR, and the Research Infrastructure Core, which I am a part of, and give you some of the resources that we have available to you. I'll do a very brief overview of what CER, or community engaged research, is, just to orient us all to the same kind of terms that we're going to be using, or that our guest speakers are going to be using when they discuss the IRB. And then following this presentation, we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. And after Q&A, if there's any time and we want to have sort of brief introductions of our attendees or guests, if you want to, you're more than welcome to give us your name, your department, and your interest in community engaged research, just so we can get to meet each other and other CVPR researchers. So, with that, I'll just say briefly that my name is Sarah Knapp, and I am a postdoctoral scholar in psychology, and I'm also a statistics consultant at the HDR. So I meet with students and faculty from all disciplines who need help designing a study or analyzing their data, really any study that they're doing in relation to health disparities research that they'd like a hand with. And Monica, do you want to introduce yourself?
So my name is Monica Wicker. I'm one of the analysts in the Office of Research Integrity. And our main priority and goal is to review human subjects research that is on campus to make sure that the research falls within local and state and federal regulations. We are not the big bad wolf. I know a lot of people like to, put that on us because we have IRB reviews and we come back with comments, but basically our job is just to make sure that your research can get approved and that you and the university are in compliance.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Craig, are you able to unmute and let us introduce yourself? Great.
Hi there. My name is Craig Vaughn. I also work in the Office of Research Integrity with Monica as a research compliance analyst. And like Monica said, we're not the bad guys. Even my faculty advisor, when I first started in a position similar at UK, joked that I joined the Empire and joined with Darth Vader and all the bad guys. And that's not who we are. It's our job to help navigate the IRB review process, because again, there's lots of things you have to work through, whether it's federal regulations, local policies, and so forth. And it's our job to help you guys through with that. We're never in the position of wanting to disapprove research or anything like that. It's our job to help you find a way to get your research approved that's federally compliant, meets all, local, state policies and everything like that. So thank you all for having us.
I'm sorry, sir. I just want to interrupt real quick and say that Craig and I invited so we have the whole crew here, so everyone knows we invited our human subjects manager, Lorraine.
Oh, wonderful.
Say a few words about herself, her wonderful self.
Great.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Castro, and I'm the Human Subjects Research Manager here at UCR. And then just to echo both Monica and Craig, our office is not here to hinder or cause obstacles for your research studies. We are here primarily to ensure the protection of the participants and help you to navigate the IRB review process. So if ever there are any questions, I'm sure Monica and Craig's contact information will be provided in the slides, but our office is always available to provide personalized assistance as well. So thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's really nice to put faces with all of your names because I think even if we've submitted IRBs previously outside of the HDR or community engaged research, we probably know most of your names and have gotten to work with you. So thank you all for being here. And I am just going to give you a little information about the HDR in general. The Health Disparities Center, the Center for Health Disparities, we are the research infrastructure core within that center, and we offer research support to faculty, postdocs, graduate students conducting health disparities, community engaged research. And I have links on this page. I'm going to put all of this in the chat for you. We also have an advanced statistics series, and in that we give you information on some of the more advanced statistics that you might be using for your research, different quantitative research methods such as hierarchical linear modeling, structural equation modeling, and path analysis. We also have a 101 series coming soon, which we're developing, where we have 3 to 5 minute micro tutorials, which describe more simple procedures like analyzing your descriptive statistics or assessing your reliability of a scale. And we are here to help with your study design, methods, analysis, and any aspect of your research into health disparities that you are conducting. And you can easily set up a consultation request with us using this link right here, which is also off of our website. And another thing that may be of particular interest to this group is something called our community engagement studios. And what those are studios where you can get feedback to inform your research from community experts. So those are people identified and recruited based on their lived experience relative to the research project themes that you are interested in for your project. And there are some great videos at this link and information that can give you more info on these studios. And so again, I will make sure everybody gets access to all of these links and resources. And just briefly to orient us to some of these terms that you're going to be hearing today from our speakers. What is community engaged research, or CER? So that is CER, community engaged research, is research conducted in partnership with patients, members of the community, different groups like health service systems, schools, faith communities, community-based organizations like the YMCA, and any number of other stakeholders. And the nature of the partnership is really based on factors related to your own research objectives. So who is involved and what their role is will likely be dictated by your specific goals. And you may have heard of community-based participatory research, or CBPR, and that is one approach to community engaged research in which all of the partners take part equitably in the research project so that each partner's unique strengths and expertise inform the research from conception to dissemination. So there are other ways to incorporate the community, is aside from this setup of being equal partners within your research. For interest, you could conduct community-informed research, incorporate community consultation or participation, or even have community-initiated research. And so there is a lot to consider with community-engaged research, and a lot of that starts with the IRB process. So without further ado, I would love to turn it over to our guest speakers, Monica, Craig, Lorraine. I'll let you take over here and let me know how I can help you share your screen. You should have access.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share our PowerPoint.
Thank you.
No problem. And let me get that slideshow mode. And okay, can you all see?
Yep, we're good.
All right, awesome. So Monica and I already introduced ourselves, and we actually, this first slide, we won't go over it too much because a lot of this was already covered by Sarah. But essentially, like she mentioned, community engaged research is rather unique in that it enables the actual community whom the research is being conducted on to be a part of the study and have a say. And oftentimes, research is conducted on communities all the time, but they're not really involved in it. And so it's really special in that it does engage them, lets them have a say, lets them have a goal, and actually helps foster relationships between the researchers and the community in general. So we'll go ahead and move on to this next slide because Sarah covered most of this. Monica, do you want to take this slide?
Right. So also some information on this page is what was already covered. But some other points that community engaged research does incorporates lived experience, insights into questions, hypotheses, and data interpretation. The design research for easily translation to real-world health settings and situations. It improves culture and language appropriate communication and interventions. Encourage participant recruitment, enrollment, and retention by community interactions. Migrate risk to specific communities by developing appropriate protections. These are some of the benefits. Build greater trust between academic researchers and communities, which may lead to additional collaborations. And I've seen that because when I first started here, we did not have any community-based research or community engagement research. And when the concept first started, it was, oh, how are we going to do that? I mean, how is that going to be possible, right? We're researchers and that's the community. But as I've been here and I've seen this grow, it is actually becoming more of a popular situation. And that's great because serving the community is one of the goals that I think every researcher should have because it's better for the research. It gives you a more robust field to work with. It gives you better research, gives you better studies, better population or better publications as well. And again, the research serves underrepresented and underserved populations.
Exactly. And so some of the things we'll talk about is, some points for consideration when engaging with community engaged research. And these are some of the things that you'll need to think about when you're submitting your application and that will need to be clear to the IRB. So one of the very first things, that you'll have to consider is what is the community's level of engagement in the study? Like Sarah mentioned earlier, community-based participatory research, there's typically like an equal partnership. In community engaged research, the level of involvement is kind of dependent on the researcher's goals and aims. So one of the very first things that the IRB is going to need to know is like, are community members serving in an advisory role only, or are they going to be more involved? And so when you're writing your application, think about these types of questions. So are the community members going to be research subjects? So those who are going to be providing data to you? Will some of them be serving as research personnel? So maybe some community members will be engaging in active recruitment. Maybe some community members will actually be part of the data collection process. And then you may have community members who meet the role of both research subjects and research personnel. So these are things that need to be made clear within your IRB application because, dependent on the level of engagement, there are different requirements. And so one thing we want to always clarify when we're looking at an application is a study personnel member's level of engagement. So when we consider somebody to be engaged and therefore required to be listed as study personnel, we want to look at whether they're interacting or intervening with subjects. So they could be, collecting data, consenting subjects, active recruitment, analysis, or if the person has access to identifiable data for a human subject. If they meet those stipulations, then they are considered engaged. And then something else that you should make the IRB aware of is whether or not there's any specific cultural issues that may impact the research design or procedures. And so sometimes, obviously cultures can be very unique and there may be things that are part of your study design that wouldn't be part of a typical study that we might see. And so if that is the case, that's something that you should make us aware of. This is one, that I heard about in a webinar, but a researcher was doing research with a tribe where the elder of the tribe was the one who consented for everyone. And typically, we would see each individual provide consent for themselves. But this was a case where that IRB had to look at that and, be advised that was the cultural norm. So, again, if there's any like specific cultural issues that you think the IRB should be aware of that are outside of what IRBs typically see, then that's something you should let us be aware of, because we can seek cultural consultants and find, somebody to serve so we have the expertise needed. And then, one of the other things you should consider in your application is describing the strategies that you're going to use for involving the community members in the design and implementation of the study. Additionally, you should describe how you'll engage the community members in the dissemination of results, if that is part of your intended plan. So we'll go ahead and move forward. And Monica, if you want to touch on this.
I just wanted to touch on something that Craig said about obtaining a cultural consultant, because sometimes when we tell researchers we have to do that, they don't understand why. But not the fact, but the situation is that when it comes to providing consent, part of our 45 CFR 46 stipulates that consent has to be obtained from each individual participant. So in the case that we don't follow that, we have to actually document that. So that's why we reach out to consultants, so we can show in our review that we know what the requirement is, we know what the criteria is, there's extenuating circumstances, we did our due diligence to find out the reason why and to get that approval. And then that way, that just protects you and the IRB and the university from anything that might, like in case there's an audit or anything. So just to touch on that real briefly. But so other points to consider when it comes to CER, what is submitted to the IRB should not be inflexible. You may find yourself needing to update your protocol or procedures once you're in the field. And please note, no research activity that are not part of an approved protocol shall take place unless the deviation is done to avoid immediate risk of harm to participants. Any other change should first be reviewed and approved by an amendment request. You should consider running your application in such a way that you have flexibility with your procedures. For example, you may find that community members prefer meeting remotely than in person, as some members may face mobility issues. So rather than stating in your application that all procedures will occur in person, you should write your application in such a way that you say it might be in person, it might be via Zoom, and it might be, via mail. So just give yourself that flexibility so you don't have, because if you write it a certain way and you need to change that, then you need to come back to us with an amendment. So we'd rather you just kind of cover all your bases in the beginning. Describe the range of procedures that may be employed during your CER. Provide a list of example questions and topics for interview, survey, research. Provide finalized instruments to the IRB prior to implementation. So this was a question that we had earlier, like we understand that when you going into the field and when you're doing this community type research, you're not exactly sure what the questions will be or what the result of these meetings and these communications will foster. So you can provide us an example of what you think that you want to ask or what will happen or what will be asked. But then once you finalize it, then you need to let us know that. For semi-structured interviews, provide example questions and topics. Do not venture away from the example topics that you indicated would be covered during the course of semi-structured interviews. So if asking more sensitive questions, provide examples of what these questions would look like. So those are just some other points to consider when you're doing this type of research.
Exactly. And so, again, we encourage you to provide yourself flexibility when possible. Like Monica said, we understand that a lot of these questions will be developed as you are engaging with the communities. We understand that, what you might have originally submitted may not be what you ultimately want to finish with. And that's why it's really important to keep the IRB involved throughout the process. And like Monica said, submit amendment requests when you know that you're going to be changing something. But at any kind of change to procedures, methods, study population, etc., that does require that amendment requests be submitted to the IRB prior to any of these changes being implemented. Like we know was noted earlier, any deviation from procedures that's, again, not to alleviate potential risk to a subject, is considered a protocol violation. And so here are some IRB do's and don'ts that we like to go through. So again, for the do's, check with the IRB staff. If you're uncertain on what your proposed project will, if it will involve human subjects or what will be required, contact us first. On the opposite of that, don't assume your project doesn't require a review or try to skip review altogether. The IRB can never provide retroactive approval of a research project that's already been, a human subjects research project that's already been done. It is IRB review is required by law. So please, it's one of those things where it's never better to ask for forgiveness after. Always ask for permission first. On the dues side, submit early, budget yourself enough time for the IRB review and approval process. Right now, due to the amount of volume that we're seeing, the IRB review and approval process is typically taking between 9 to 10 weeks. So budget that into your time. If you know that you're going to have a strict deadline, be in contact with us early. Don't submit late. Make sure to include all subject-facing research materials in your initial submission of your application. A lot of people leave out needed documents. And so that only delays the review process. If, for example, the first review, you submit an application and you've not included your consent form, that's only going to delay it because maybe upon the second submission, you include the consent document and then the IRB has comments that need to be addressed in that consent that could have been addressed the first go around. So, make sure that you're including all subject-facing materials because that will expedite the review process. When you're submitting your application, make sure that you're completing all the required sections comprehensively and completely. Don't assume that the IRB has a working knowledge of everything within your study. A lot of times, and I've been guilty of this myself, when we're talking about something, we know it so well, and we just assume the person we're talking to or writing to understands it as well. Monica always gives this tip: write the application like you're writing it for your grandparents. Put it in easy to understand terms. Don't use technical jargon without explaining what those terms mean. Things like that can delay the review process. Again, don't provide inconsistent materials. This one is a big thing that causes a lot of delay in the review process. And this is really difficult to navigate when you have, numerous people working on a study. You might have one individual working on the informed consent document and another individual working on the recruitment materials. But, you need to make sure throughout all your materials that procedures, listed duration, compensation amounts, all of that is consistent throughout, because that's something that will get your application sent back. So going off that, make sure that you're proofreading your application. And then another thing is obviously complete human subjects protection course. This training is required for everybody listed in the application. And lastly, don't hesitate to contact us if you have questions or concerns. We're here to help. It's our job, and we're more than happy to do it.
I want to say one other thing just occurred to me as Craig was going through this list. It's a situation that I recently dealt with. So we had a researcher who was going to be doing some community-based, community engagement type research in a different location. And before coming to the IRB to talk about time frame, what was required, if he could even do this type of study, because there was some risk to it. He went ahead and he purchased his tickets, and he had a tight window, which unfortunately he gave the IRB like 2 weeks to review his study, which we couldn't accommodate. So if your research is going to take you to a different location, please come and talk to us right away so we can figure out a way to maneuver around this. But I hate to see people lose out on money. But unfortunately, his options were to not go or just go and sit and wait. So he ended up just to go sit and wait. And then he had to pay extra for the hotel room as well. So please just come and talk to us. Like Craig said, the minute you know that you have a research study that might be a little bit out of the norm. And so since we're talking about that, reasons for the IRB delay, not providing the required attached material that we need, which would be the consent form, any measures, survey documents, questionnaires, anything that the participant sees, the IRB needs to see. Even if you're going to be doing like advertisement on social media, we need to see what that advertisement looks like. If you're going to be sending out a postcard, we need to see what that postcard looks like. So any type of material, leaving out the required elements of conformed consent. So we have a couple templates that we can send if someone needs it, because there's certain things that need to be in the informed consent document, including inconsistent information between the IRB application and supporting materials, like saying, oh, my participants involved in this research are going to fill out one survey per week, but then the consent form says, please be advised that you'll be filling out 3 surveys a week, so it has to be consistent. Not describing the plan and for confidentiality, for storing sensitive data, that's a very important one. Not providing information that is requested after review. Sometimes during our reviews, we send back comments, and the researcher will send back the application and they haven't addressed comments, which is strange because they address some, but not others. So we have to send it back. So make sure you addressed all the comments that are in there. Providing complete information on the application, failing to provide letters of permissions, letters of access from external sites involved in your research when requested. So if you're going to be going into a church or going into a place of business, those entities have to be made aware of and okay that you're coming in, and they have to know exactly what you're going to be doing. And then we request that you provide us with those letters. Not completing the training for those involved in the research. So everyone who's actively engaged in your research has to complete the human subjects training. There's no way around it. They just can't do the research unless they take the training. Grammar or spelling errors that impact readability. So this would be like if part of your participants are, let's say, minors, like 7, 8, 9-year-olds, and your consent document is written to the level of a 13, 14, 15-year-old, then we will be coming back to you asking you to revise it so that it's age appropriate. So those are just some reasons for the delays.
And something I'd like to add, because Monica reminded me of this when she was bringing up international research and buying your tickets in advance. If you're going to be doing international research, something that would really benefit you is to go to the Office of Human Research Protection's site. They have an international compendium for local laws and requirements. And they pretty much have every country mapped out, resources, dependent upon what type of research you're doing. But certain countries have very strict and specific laws that have to be abided to when you're doing research in their country. We do have some guidance. So like if you're doing research in the EEA, we do have some guidance for GDPR, which is, their primary privacy law. But again, each country has, potential specific laws and requirements that you have to follow. And so you need to be looking those up getting an idea of what's going to be required, and in your application, describing how you're going to abide by those local laws and regulations. So this is primarily the content we had for CER. We did have a little bit of stuff on Kuali, and we just wanted to briefly bring up this is our new protocol submission system. So if you're going to be submitting an application to us at all, it'll have to be through the Kuali protocol system. Essentially, you know, we have our login portal. You'll log into this with your net ID and password, and then you'll be taken to a protocols page. We were going to go through an application, but I know we have a lot of people here, and Sarah, I don't know if at this point if you think it would be better to address Q&A, because we do plan on having future sessions on how to walk through the quality submissions process.
Yeah, I wonder if people want to let me know in the chat. Would you like to see some more specific examples of how to use Kuali in this context? Or do we want to move on to some Q&A that may be related to the bigger picture? Yes, for Kuali? Okay, I have one vote for Kuali. I think it would be great to continue on with what you've prepared and see more specifics about Kuali. And then if we could stop in about 10 to 15 minutes and we can transition to more broad Q&A.
You're muted, Craig.
Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to get a protocol. Sorry, I said protocol. I'm mixing Kuali and protocol. Okay, I'm going to get an application open, and we'll walk through the process. So, let me go ahead and share my screen now that I'm in Kuali.
I like that quarter claw. It's our new system.
Sorry, a little bit of got my tongue tied there. Okay, so when you log into Kuali, you'll be first taken to like a screen, and it'll show you like users, protocols, and a few other options. You'll select protocol after you've logged in, and likely your screen won't have any applications on it like this does right now. But what you'll want to do is you'll want to go over to the right side, and you're going to select new protocol.
I'm sorry. Real quick. Your screen will have the applications. Your screen will have your applications, even the ones that you haven't put in Kuali. So when we migrated over from FileMaker, we pulled over all the applications. So even if you don't have any applications in Kuali, it will pull over just some very basic information of the applications that you do have. So just want to clarify that you might see some applications on your own page.
Exactly. Yeah, and I should have mentioned that. But no, it's not. But so the very first question you'll have is, whether it's ICOOK or IRB, they do the review of research involving animals. So make sure that you hit IRB. So the first couple pages of this is basically you're just going to be providing some general information. So one of the very first things you're going to do is put in your study title. So for this example, you're going to say test study. And then the next question is going to ask you whether or not a PI eligible faculty member is leading the research. So if any of you are students, you're going to hit no for this. And when you hit no, when you hit yes, it's going to say faculty advisor. So it changes principal investigator to faculty advisor. But essentially, we require that any student-led research has a faculty advisor serves the role of the actual principal investigator. But for today's purposes, I'm going to put myself. And then you'll see that the lead department will auto-populate. If for some reason that you do not see that it's showing the right population, you can close this out, and then you can add your population, your department. The next question will ask you if the person's certified eligible to serve the role of PI. If you're not sure, you can read the policy. The next question after that asks about the submission type. So for today's purposes, we're going to say, yes, this is an IRB human subjects review. We know that it needs IRB review. If you're not sure, select this other option, not human subjects research determination. The application is much more abridged, but it will get you an official determination from our office whether or not your application requires IRB review and approval. So moving forward, the next set of questions are going to ask us about a lay language summary of the proposed activity.
I'm sorry,
You know,
can I just jump in real quick, Craig?
yeah,
But I would suggest that if you're not sure whether or not your project involves human subjects, you contact the office and let's have a discussion, because what we don't want to do is have you fill out this form for that determination, and then we come back and say it is human subjects research, and then you have to go in and you have to fill out some more information. So if you're really unsure, you can go ahead and click that, but to save yourself some time, I would suggest just emailing us, and then we'll have a conversation and figure it out together.
yeah, that's really good advice. And I would say, like Monica said, that probably, I guess it'd be better to only hit the non-human subjects research if you're pretty sure that it's not going to be. So after that, you can provide a lay language summary, you know, what your research aims are, what questions you want to answer, and so forth. After that, you'll be asked to provide the scholarly rationale. And, you know, here's where you're showing that there's scientific merit to your study, that, you know, basically what you're doing is, you know, there's going to be some societal benefit. There's some question that needs to be answered. Your research is going to do it via the following ways. After that, you'll list the locations where the activities will be performed. So, you know, you can select any of these. Multiple may be applicable. Maybe you're doing international research, but, you know, you're also going to be doing web-based because you're going to be doing surveys, you know, and then you'll be asked to provide a description. And obviously, you know, all the text we're putting in today is very brief, just for the sake of completing the application. And then here you'll be asked to confirm that you have documentation that meets site's permission to conduct the study at said site. And that's very important. And then whether or not the study is a collaborative or multi-site study. For today's purposes, we're going to go ahead and say it's not. But if you answer that it is a collaborative study, then you're going to be asked some additional questions, such as who, how many other institutions are you working with? Are they getting their own IRB review and approval? You know, is one trying to seek a reliance agreement? Those questions will auto-populate if you mark yes. And, you know, if you say that UCR is going to be the IRB of record, then an additional section will pop up here called participating sites. And that's where you'll enter the information for the other sites. While we're here, before we start going through the application itself, I just want to kind of show you the navigation. So on the left side of your screen, these are all the individual sections of the application that have to be completed. They have to get that green check mark for you to be able to submit. Now, there's only 2 sections that will not have a green check mark. That's the supporting information, because you could upload, you know, you might need to upload 30 some documents. There's not really a way for the system to know whether you're completed. With the exception of, you know, if you click that you're doing survey research, it will ask you to like upload a survey instrument before you can submit. And then the other option that won't get a green check mark is this added information / optional section, because again, it's optional. But anyway, going through here, it can let you easily navigate any section of the application you need to go to. And as you fill out the application, more sections might pop up as you select certain answers. The application works with branching logic, and it really doesn't want you to have to answer any questions that aren't relevant to your research. So that is a plus from this compared to the old application. So right up here is Some other important things like this takes you to the main protocol. This shows you the activity log. And right now, this is really blank because, again, we've not even submitted the application yet. But if at any point, during the submission process, you want to see where your application is, go to the, log into Kuali, go to the activity log, and you can get an idea of, okay, it was sent out for, it was sent back to me on this date, or it's been with the IRB for this much time. Always check the activity log if you're unsure where your application is in the review process. This ancillary review, you're not going to be able to see that on your end. This is where we check if department sign off from your chair or dean has been obtained, and that's required for us to be able to approve an application. But you don't have to worry about that. We'll help you navigate that if we see that it's not been obtained. And then permissions right here shows you who on your study personnel team has the ability to edit the application. So when you're adding your study personnel list, which will show a little bit of that, you can determine the permission level they have. So full access means that somebody can read the application, but it also means they have editing capabilities. And then there's a read-only option, which means like, maybe you have some graduate students who you want them to be able to see the application, but you don't want them to be able to edit it. Then you would mark them as read-only. And then on the right side of our screen is the other kind of the more finalizing options. So we can abandon the submission if we wanted to by doing this, but please note once you abandon it, it's permanent. It cannot be brought back. I accidentally skipped over this, but there's the administrative notes and files. This is where a lot of times myself or Monica or Lorraine, if we want you to see like maybe some instructions or like some guidance, we might upload it here in this section and we will make it reviewable to you and so forth. But it's a way for us to like upload documents in your application without including them in supporting information. It's also a way for us to make notes and so forth. And then here's the submit button. And if I do that right now, you're going to see tons of red circles go up because it's going to tell you, all these sections are incomplete. If you're a student, this button here that's grayed out for me, notify PI to submit. If you're a student, you can't actually submit the application yourself. You can fill out every single portion of it, but your faculty advisor has to be the one who ultimately submits it because they're ultimately the one who's responsible and who we look at as the principal investigator. But if you are the PI, then you'll have this submit button instead. Duplicate as new is a button where you can create another application that essentially is a copycat of this version. And sometimes if you're doing research that's very similar, maybe it only requires a few edits here and there, it can be a good thing to do. Also, for some reason, if there's a need to abandon the one, you can duplicate it. But that's a little bit rarer. And then finally, this last option, print, allows you to create a PDF version of the application. So maybe you want to abandon it and come back to it later. You can print it. It'll save a PDF. Please note, though, the PDF only captures the application for the protocol on. It doesn't capture any of these other sections, and it doesn't capture any supporting information. So like any attached documents. So I'm sorry, I've talked quite a bit. I'm gonna see if there's any questions in the chat.
Okay, right. Real quick, Craig, can we show them we're on the research procedures tab where it talks that section about community excuse me.
Yes. So as Monica was mentioning, there's a section called research procedures where you'll select all that apply. But one of these is community-based research. And when you select that, you'll see on the left side of the screen, a new section pops up. So right here, there's now community-based research. And so there are a few questions that are specific to community-based research. And these are some of the things we talked about. Monica, do you want to read these questions or I can go over them, it doesn't matter.
Sorry, I apologize for my coughing fit. So the questions that describe the community involvement in the research study. So these are the questions that you'll have to ask. What aspects of the research the community will be involved in? How will research findings be shared? Are there any additional reviews that are needed, like local ethics reviews required from within the community? So sometimes when you're doing a study like that, there's a committee that wants to review the research before you submit it, so that you can make sure that they can make sure that you are on the same page and you're accurately representing what they think you're representing. And some of these questions are on the slides that we talked about earlier, like what you should be cognizant of as you're filling out this section of your application.
Exactly. And a lot of the application, it's pretty self-explanatory once you select certain things. Like if, say I'm doing community-based participant or sorry, community-based research, but I'm also going to include, interviews and focus groups. Now there's a section for interviews and focus groups. And then, I'll be asked, are these taking place in person or virtually? And like, if I answer that, then additional questions pop up. So I see that we have 10 minutes left. I can continue to go through the application process, but I also want to save time for Q&A if anybody has any questions.
Can I ask Craig if anything else in the IRB is specific to anything we might be doing with community engaged research as opposed to our IRBs that we may have done previously, or?
What do you mean?
So,
Aside
go
from
ahead.
that one section?
Yeah, aside from that one section on Kuali, is there any other information that we should maybe specifically know about this kind of research in terms of this IRB?
Yeah, so there's not necessarily any specific questions in the application past that section. However, we would expect that, like, the study timeline procedures and the research procedures, like the interview part, all those questions adequately touch on the community's involvement, what they're going to be doing in the research. So what you say you're doing here, what their involvement is translated into the other sections of the application. Something else I would bring up is, like, if you know that you're going to have community members serve as research personnel, then there's a place here to add non-UCR personnel. And then, you can add them. And I will say you'll have to add them and their information in manually. Whereas for people who are UCR affiliated, they are already in our database, and so like you can just type up and their information auto populates after a certain point. But for, like, if you're going to have community members serve as research personnel, then you're going to have to add them in manually. But other than that, there's not necessarily any places where it's specific to community engaged research other than selecting this. But the information that's in this section, it should be apparent in all other sections of the application where applicable.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. That's very helpful. Let's see. Can you clarify what is needed to collect data from human participants in public spaces like parks, coffee shops, library, versus a specific business or community type organization?
So are you talking about observational data, observational research, as opposed to like interview surveys, that type of
So that was a question from the chat. So interviews and surveys. Yeah. So
Okay.
if I wanted to actually distribute interviews or surveys.
Right. So if you're just doing observational research, like if you're just going to go to a park and observe people and watch people, we don't necessarily need to have anything except that you just put that information in your application. But if you're going to be doing interviews, surveys, then you need to you need to have the consent document that talks that, and you need to have any type of measures or interview scripts or guides that they're going to have If you're going to be going into, like we talked about, access letters, if you're going to be going into any places that require you to have access, we need to have those documents as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I know somebody in the chat specified observations that they're curious about that as well. When it comes to observations, it's really a question of public versus private. If there's no expectation of privacy, so you're in a public setting and you're just, collecting you're collecting information about what you see, and there's no reasonable expectation of privacy, then that's something that's much simpler than if you're going into a private place and you're wanting to collect information about what you're observing, but there is an expectation of privacy. And so in that case, where observation is not something that typically requires consent in public settings, you may need to get consent when in a private setting, because again, it's all about what is the norm or the perception of privacy.
But even then, you have to be careful because some public places have expectations of privacy. Like if you're going to like a nudist beach, right? That's not a typical public venue. So the expectation of privacy is kind of inherent because of the nature of the venue. So if you're ever unsure, you need to just contact the IRB and we can talk through this and let you know. But like Craig said, if there's no expectation of privacy, like if you're at a park or you're at a concert, at a music festival, you can have that public observation. You're at sports, parks, shopping malls, yes.
That's great. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's continue to put questions in the chat, or if you're an attendee and you want to speak and ask your question, just raise your hand and I'll make it so that can happen. But yeah, feel free to enter more questions in the chat here, maybe about Kuali or any of the other topics.
Lorraine, you popped on. Did you have anything to add, or you just popped on to?
I just popped on to prepare if there is anything else to add. Just to touch a little bit on public observations. We will also ask you exactly what kind of information you will be observing. So if you are just, taking down details of what individuals are doing, like their actions, interactions, but we typically discourage researchers from documenting identifiable information. So, if your study does require you to document like really identifying details about an individual, we will ask you to provide a justification for that. So even though it's a public space, we do want to respect individuals' privacy, right? So they may be in a public space, but they may not want, identifiable information to be recorded about them by researchers. So it's all taking into account your entire study.
Right.
Great. And we have a couple of questions in the chat that are really great. And since we're almost out of time, I'll just mention that if you submitted a question beforehand, they were really great. Our guest speakers have replied to them in writing, so I will send those out to the group along with resources and some contact information. So if you need to sign off, you feel free to do that without missing any of the information. But just to touch on these questions. What if I am a member of the population who I collect information from? So for example, I attended a health fair as an attendee, but I interviewed a few colleagues. So is there any special considerations if the researcher is also a member of the community?
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Lorraine.
So typically, if you are conducting research within your own community, organization, etc., we will take a look to see your role in that community. So if you have kind of like a supervisory role, we will kind of assess that situation. We wouldn't want any individuals to feel pressured to partake in a research study. However, if you are just kind of amongst the community, then there shouldn't be an issue as long as if it's a established organization, the organization is aware that you are conducting research within the community and ensuring that all members are aware that they can opt not to participate, right? That they have the ability to decline and not have it, not have there be any consequences to that.
Okay, thank you. Is there a certificate of liability or MOU required as part of the IRB submission when working with a community organization where all of the data collection procedures will take place at?
So the certificate of liability, that would have to be coordinated with our with UCR's risk management office. So that deals with insurance considerations. So if the organization does ask for a certificate of liability, risk management would be the office to go to. In terms of an MOU, UCR typically requires those only for funded studies. So if there is an exchange of funding with the site, there would be a requirement for that. However, we have seen some sites where there's no funding that request an MOU to be developed and signed. And that is good practice because it does outline exactly what is expected from the site and what is expected from the research team as well. But those MOUs will need to go through our sponsored programs office. So the MOU should be signed by an authorized individual within the university, and those individuals are our sponsored program officers.
Okay, great. And I want to be conscious of time, but maybe if we could squeeze one more question in. There was a good question that was submitted earlier. What if researchers would like to research questions that emerge from the needs and ideas of the community members? So I think people are also thinking about the iterative process that is going to naturally or hopefully come out of engaging with the community. And how do we sort of prepare with the IRB for something that we might not know yet our research is going to take us in that direction?
So typically what we've seen, and so that's completely understandable when working with communities, you want to ensure that you are addressing the community's needs, their concerns. And so you typically won't know that until you actually start engaging with the community. However, what we've seen is that researchers have the skills and the knowledge and the expertise on how a research study is conducted. And so normally what we've seen is that researchers will present viable options on what kind of topics will be researched and how to do that, and then have a full-on discussion with the community in that way, right? So the researchers are guiding the community on how the research will take place, and that information can easily go into the IRB protocol and start in that step. And as the discussion starts, obviously after IRB approval, if anything changes, then that would come back to the IRB via amendments.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. And so we are a couple of minutes over, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I see some signing off, but I will follow this up with a little information about some of the things we didn't get to those of you who RSVP'd. I have your email, and if you did not get a chance to RSVP, you can put that in the chat for me, and I'll be able to contact you with the information for following up with some of these resources. But huge thank you to our guest speakers, Monica, Lorraine, Craig. This was absolutely fantastic, so incredibly helpful, and I think has really brought up so many points. I feel like I could continue to talk to you about these things all day. So we might consider a follow-up too, if people are interested, or if you're willing to share your time with us. Really fantastic. So thank you.
Always a
Yeah.
pleasure. We
Yeah.
like
Thank you for
doing this type, we like doing this type of outreach because then people, like you said, they can see a face with a name, and our goal is to provide great customer service in addition to, or despite the fact that we have to be a regulatory, body.
Mhm.
And we're not, and we're all nice people.
Yeah. You're all very nice. And yeah, so it's really great. And I love your points about if you're unsure, you are there, and we can email you and get some really personalized, specific feedback about our own research design and what we're looking to do for our goals. So that's really wonderful, helpful. Again, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure talking to you today. For those of you interested, we will let you know also how this recording can be obtained, and probably ask your feedback actually for any future workshops that we may be able to put together for you. So thank you so much to our speakers. We absolutely appreciate it. And with that, I am going to end this workshop. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Since you said you have everyone's email address, I'm going to get with my team, and we're going to put together like an evaluation, and we'll send that to you, and then you can just have people critique our talk. We always like to know what we can do better, or what other topics people may want to hear from the IRB.
Okay, excellent. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to sign off now. Actually, I'll probably stick around. I'll let our guests sign off. I'll stick around for a few minutes in case anybody has some questions for me. But thank you so much. I look forward to continuing this conversation with you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.